What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Encumbered. Brand new year, brand new NASCAR season, and it feels great to be back. And let's just jump right into it because we gotta talk about what everybody's talking about. First race weekend of the year for NASCAR, the Busch Light Clash at the LA Coliseum. And who knew how this was going to turn out? Heading into this weekend, I would argue that NASCAR really hoped that this was going to turn out really well for them. It was a Hail Mary move to move the Clash from Daytona and move it into a football stadium that has never hosted a race. Was going to be a very small track, and who knew if this was going to work? And you have a brand new race car, a brand new next-gen car out here. There's been a supply shortage. There's been concerns of how many cars these teams actually have. And there's a lot at risk for NASCAR, but they felt like they needed to do something great, especially after a couple of lackluster years of having the Busch Clash at Daytona International Speedway, where they tried it on Saturday night, and then they moved it to Sunday afternoon, and then they moved it to Tuesday, and they moved it to the road course, and a lot of things that they tried there that just didn't seem to click. So this was a big weekend for NASCAR, and arguably a must-win for NASCAR, if you can put it into terms like that. And then you had people that were optimistic about it. You had people that said this is a great change. You had people that were pessimistic about it, saying this is the stupidest thing that NASCAR has ever done. And I would think those people, they never wanted this to work at all, judging by the reaction on Twitter. But unfortunately for them, I think this was a fantastic weekend for NASCAR. And just even before the actual race started, this had a bigger fight feel than any Busch Clash, Brent Unlimited, Budweiser Shootout, whatever, any exhibition race that I've ever seen for NASCAR, maybe any NASCAR race that I've ever seen, period. This felt like a spectacle. This felt ginormous. And NASCAR and the LA Coliseum did a fantastic job of making this feel just absolutely enormous from the beginning of the weekend, from the hype, and you gotta give Fox Sports a lot of credit for that too, because building into this weekend, this race has been built bigger than, I would say, any race not named the Daytona 500 has been in a long time, probably in my lifetime. It might be even build bigger than any Daytona 500 I've ever seen build at. And they did a fantastic job of making this feel huge. And the thing is, even with a big build and a big emphasis on everything, it doesn't matter unless if the race is huge. It doesn't matter if the race sucks, because at the end of the day, the people are only going to remember that the race was bad and that the racing wasn't very good, and maybe the pre-race concerts were a little cheesy. But all that said, everything worked for NASCAR. I don't think they could have asked for a better weekend. From practice to qualifying to the heat races to the last chance qualifiers to the actual race itself, there was nothing wrong with it. That was just classic short track racing, and you couldn't have asked for anything better. There's been a large portion of the NASCAR audience, I would say the majority of the NASCAR audience, that has asked for years, we need more short tracks. We need more short tracks. And NASCAR gave it to them and knocked it out of the park. If you're not satisfied with that, I don't know what you want, because you had guys that had to get aggressive to get around each other. You had guys having to make those aggressive moves, having to use their bumper, having to use these cars, having to put these composite bodies really to the test. And shout out to these new cars, because they held up really well when you didn't have guys like Kyle Larson just absolutely destroying Justin Haley. And they held up well, and it was fantastic. And you had guys hitting the wall. You had guys beating off of each other, and these cars held up great. Of course, at the end of the day, who else would win the first race of 2022 besides the driver of the number 22, Joey Logano, who had a heck of a fight with Kyle Busch at the end of the race to see who would get the first win at the LA Coliseum, which went to Logano. And the race itself was great. The crowd, if you're saying that was a small crowd, you're ridiculous and you're just looking for a wrong narrative, because that crowd was packed. That might have a bigger crowd than we'll see at the Daytona 500. That was great. We did see some problems, though, however, with the next-gen car, and I don't think this is going to be an anomaly just with the Clash. I think you're going to see this all year, where you're going to be seeing guys having to work out these bugs, essentially, like Denny Hamlin said in his post-race interview, where he, Tyler Reddick, and Chase Briscoe were among those that exited early after having mechanical problems. I believe it was a transaxle problem. I'm not the biggest mechanic in the world, but I think, like Danny said, I think you're going to see a lot of that this year. And overall, obviously Tyler Reddick, he was a favorite. He was leading when all this happened to him. But overall, I don't think it had as big of an effect. It didn't affect the majority of the field. And thankfully, it didn't play into the outcome of the race too much. You had the halftime show with Ice Cube, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm not a person that wants this for every single race weekend. No, I don't. We don't need that. These races already run long enough the way it is. But for this, it worked really well, and I think the length of it really served to its advantage, where you had a short little opening, gives people what they want, make them want more. You throw in Ice Cube, who did a great job interacting with the crowd. I know some of those camera shots made it look like those people couldn't care less about Ice Cube, but man, he had the crowd talking back to him, and I think that was pretty cool, and he did a great job keeping that crowd lively. And then after that was very weird, because there's a couple of cautions, and Ryan Blaney exited the race, and apparently as soon as he got out of his car, ran and threw his Hans device at Eric Jones, and Fox is mentioning all this, and we didn't get a camera angle on it. The one feud that we had all weekend, and I'm kind of surprised it was the only feud that we had all weekend, we missed it. We missed them getting a Hans device thrown. You had drones, you had cameras everywhere. The track is tiny. How in the world did you miss? How did you miss that? I don't know. That's my one complaint to the Fox department, is just how in the world do you miss that? That's worse than Montoya hitting the jet dryer. At least nobody expected Juan Pablo hitting a jet dryer. You had to expect conflict and fights and all that. And it's a tiny racetrack. How do you miss Ryan Blaney throwing a Hans device? Whatever. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't too impressed with how Kyle Larson handled the Justin Haley situation, because, like I said, these guys were racing each other hard all weekend long, and he went up there and they were racing aggressive with each other, and Kyle Larson just said, screw this, and threw Justin Haley right into the wall, ended his day. I don't know if that was completely necessary, but as I tweeted out, follow me on Twitter, MitchellB66, that's short track racing. You can't get too mad about that. Shout out to Justin Haley, by the way, who had a great weekend. He qualified well. He won his heat, and he looked pretty good during the race. He was top 5, I think, for majority of it. And yeah, sucks that his day had to end like that. Tough break for Kaulig Racing, too, as a newer Cup Series team. I know they have a win, but this is their first full season having to lose a car like that. It's a bummer. But yeah, and then the end of the race was fun. You had lap traffic play a little bit of a factor into it, but once Joey Logano got around Kyle Busch, game over, and he got the job done. And it was a great race. It was a fun race, better than the Clash has been in years. Even if you take out all the spectacle and the entertainment side of it, I think that race was way better, and it does a way better job of bringing in potentially a really big new audience into NASCAR versus if they just did it at Daytona and ran the road course or ran it on Sunday morning again. I think this is way better. And shout out to Fox for having this coverage all day pretty much on their big Fox. So that's awesome. Speaking of Fox, like I said, they did a great job this weekend. They gave it a big fight feel. Clashes never felt bigger. Another big problem was there's just some things that they missed, and I think it's a new season. You'll get that cleaned up. But like right after the second last chance qualifier, they completely missed what happened to Ty Dillon, and we'll get into the heats and the last chance qualifiers. But it's just like I get you have to get to Pitbull, you have to show him performing, but like it's a big deal. There's a driver that was supposed to be in the race and got removed from the race and essentially got disqualified. That's a big deal. Run a 30-second blurb on why that's happening so your audience at home is not scratching their heads and not knowing what's going on if they're not paying attention to Twitter. But yeah, let's dive into the heats. Practice, qualifying was all great. It was fun to see practice actually matter and actually back again after only seeing it on select times last year. So that was cool. The heats were fun. They were short, but there was a lot of action, especially between those transfer spots. I know some people complain that, oh, the leader or the pole setter always won the heat, but like if you're first or second, why are you going to be driving that hard for a heat win when you can just save your equipment? And yeah, it was fun. I mean, you had some beating and bang. You could really tell that these guys, and Clint Boyer said best, there was a big do or die attitude to this race. You wanted to be in that main event. You did not want to go home, and you could tell how much this making this show meant to these guys, and that's really cool. I don't think you see that. I think, and I tweeted this out too, I think that's why you often see why the Open is better than the All-Star race, although in this situation, I think that the main event was the best racing that we've seen all weekend. Maybe some of the worst racing we saw all weekend was that second last chance qualifier, which, I mean, you're going to have that. You got all these guys that are desperate to make the main event. The first last chance qualifier was kind of funny because, like, kind of anticlimactic. You had, I believe, AJ Allmendinger bumping Ross Chastain out of the way so that he could get into the last chance, or he could get into the main event. But other than that, and also shout out to College Racing. They had 2 cars in the main event. Great start for them. And that race was pretty anticlimactic, where the second last chance qualifier hit the fan. You had cautions upon cautions upon cautions upon cautions. Guys just running over each other, dive bombing, wrecking each other, just sloppy racing. But I mean, hey, it's part of the deal with short track racing. You're going to have that sometimes. And it was just absolutely insane. But the craziest part comes at the end. You had Ty Dillon, who ended up winning the last chance qualifier after he had to go to the back after a restart violation, and then he didn't end up winning the race. NASCAR said he jumped the restart, which, I mean, some people are upset with that, which they always are when NASCAR makes a penalty like that, but he very obviously jumped the restart, so NASCAR made the right call. That takes him out, pushes Ryan Preece, Rick Ware getting a last chance qualifier win. You had Bubba Wallace finishing second and Harrison Burton in third, getting into the main event because of Ty Dillon missing the show and Fox not explaining it for like 15 minutes, which was just absolutely bonkers. But man, oh man, what a weekend. What a great weekend for NASCAR. Stands are packed. Racing was good. What more can you ask for it? I mean, just awesome. A big win all around for NASCAR. And yeah, I mean, if you're a first-time fan watching that, and this was your first weekend watching NASCAR, I feel like you gotta be excited. How can you not be excited to watch Daytona 500 after watching that? I've watched NASCAR my entire life. I am absolutely pumped up to watch the Daytona 500, and I hope you guys are too. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments section below, and thank you for watching Encumbered. We got something else coming up this week, so it's not just gonna be a one and done this week. So stay tuned to the channel, and hope you guys have a great week. Bye.